So our first question is from Jess from Queen's Park Books, who says, I'd love to know what books are on Graham's TBR pile. Is there anything coming out soon that you're very keen to read?
Well, Jess, I'm just finishing up William Boyd, Gabriel's Moon. Loving it, so great. Damien Barr's, I've got The Two Roberts. That's coming out in the end of the summer, I think. So I've got a proof of that. I want to read that next. And just looking around the shop, I am the last person on earth who hasn't read James, Percival Edward. So I do want to read that.
We'll have to give you a copy.
Oh, thank you.
For you to depart.
My plan has worked.
Mention more quickly. Our next question is from Sue from Lingham's, who says, I adored Frankie. If you could have met Frankie in real life, what would you say? And the second part to the question is, would you have chatted to her as the older Frankie or the younger Frankie?
I mean, good question. I think you'd have to talk to the older Frankie. You know, and I know this from the chat show, you know, young stars are fun, but you do run out of stories quite quickly. And not their fault, they just haven't lived. Whereas if you meet someone who's, you know, in their 80s, you know, so long as they've still got their marbles, they've got the good stories. They've lived a life. So I think I would want to talk to her when she's older. And I guess I'd like to talk to her about her experience of kind of on the periphery of the art world, and maybe about West Cork, because that's probably what she'd want to talk about, because that's the kind of thing we have in common.
I love that. That's such a nice answer. The next question is from Michelle from Timber Books, who says, and I'm going to look at this so that I can read it properly, Frankie has been described as a dazzling, decade-sweeping story about love, bravery, and what it means to live a significant life. What would you consider to be the most significant action or achievement of your life so far, or is the best still to come?
I mean, you always like to think the best is yet to come. But, you know, when you get to, like, Frankie's age, in her 80s, that's, you know, slightly delusional. You know, what is the best? I got out of this chair. It's the crowning achievement of my life. And even, you know, now I'm 62, so it would be a little, you know, foolish to think that my greatest glories are ahead. I suppose I have to think that the talk show, in a way, is the biggest thing I've achieved. One, just getting it, but also that I've kept it going for so long. And I'm very aware that the success of the talk show is the thing that has gifted me so many other huge pleasures in my life. You know, like writing, like talking to you here. I'm aware that that's how that happened. I might have written a book, I might have published a book, but I mightn't have an opportunity like this where I'm talking to you.
That's really nice. And like, do you think that if you were to do something else in the future, I read when I was preparing for this that you you wrote a novel 10 years ago for the first time because you were like, I want a challenge, I want to do something totally different. Do you think, obviously the talk show's given you the kind of bed for that, as you say, but do you think is there anything in your mind that you're like, do you know what, I'd love to achieve this, either personally or career-wise?
Not really. I mean, it's interesting because I think with writing, each book is a new challenge. You know, because writing and, you know, I'm going to challenge myself, I'm going to write a novel. Fine, you do that. But then the next novel, okay, I'm not going to write that novel again. I'm going to see if I can do something darker or do something more complicated or do, you know, with Frankie, I delved into historical fiction and research, which I'd never done before. So each time that offers up its own challenges. So it's like I don't have to go looking for them. I don't have to leave the house looking for the challenge. I'm not going to run a marathon, but I might attempt a family saga.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. When you started writing Frankie, were you led by the plot or the characters first? This is a question from Jackie from the Little Green Bookshop.
Unusually, Jackie, this time it was kind of the plot, really. Often I'll think of characters or characters in a situation, and then you kind of extrapolate from that and see how that might play out or what would happen to that character. Home Stretch, the lead character in that, crashes a car and 3 of his friends are killed, and that was the starting point for everything in that, and what would happen to that person. In Frankie, where I was telling the story of a life, that kind of came about because I had a couple of ideas. I had the idea of that young woman in a kind of loveless, almost arranged marriage in West Cork. And then I had the idea of the art world in New York in the 60s. And I was going, which of those is a novel? And then I thought, duh, if I write the story of a life, I can incorporate both of those things, because all of our lives do that. They jump from kind of plot to plot, from scene to scene.
Yeah, I love that. Can I throw in my question now?
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like it links well. You seem to take such joy in the characters that you write. I think even from Frankie herself through to the Nor, and even the sort of the more villainous characters, even you kind of feel like you're getting they're really real, and they just are so coming out from the page. And I wondered, how do you achieve that? Do you think it comes from your work in talking to so many people as your job? You clearly love people in real life, or do you think? And I was going to say, how does it also? How do you know when you've done it?
How do you know when you've done it? I don't know. For me, I think characters become fully formed because of time. There's even if you introduce a character just as a baddie, they're here to do a job. They've got to be the evil whatever. Once you spend time with them, once they're in scenes and doing other things, you've got to explore them a bit. You've got to explain, well, they're not just a twirling moustached person. There's got to be some reason behind that. And I think that is about time. Because in life, we reduce so many people we meet to one thing. Oh, he's the boring guy. She's the funny one. He's the drinker. And they've got a name and who they are. We don't go into, he's a drinker, but he's a very good father, and actually I think he started drinking when his wife was ill. And no one cares. We don't have time to fully, to flesh out everyone in our life.
Of course.
But I think in a book, you are granted time to flesh people out.
Even if it doesn't make it onto the page?
Yeah, I think in your head, you've got to kind of know who they are as an entire human being.
Yeah, and do you do any kind of work on that, or is it kind of coming as you're writing?
I think that's something that happens, when you're working with an editor, where the editor will say, does that make sense? Why would she choose to do that? And you've got to go, okay, I've got to go back in and pick that apart and give her more motivation, or, whatever.
Yeah. While we're on character, Eileen from the Ginger Cat Bookshop has asked, can I ask, are any of Graham's characters inspired by friends, family, or people you know?
Eileen, great name for a bookshop, firstly. I hope there is a ginger cat.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's a bit sad.
I don't know, we'll have to find out.
You have to recast once they go back. Here's our new ginger cat. But I'm riffing now because no is the answer to that question. I think the temptation for writers to cannibalise their own life is enormous, but I think it's slightly different being man off the telly writing, because you don't want people to dig, because I'm exposed in these books. If you want to know who I am, all of this book came out of my head, but I don't want people in my life to be exposed in these books. Yeah. So I try very, very hard not to base characters on anything that's identifiable. Having said that, when I wrote my first book, Holding, there were 3 sisters, the Ross sisters, and they live in the little town Dunedin. And I said to everyone, the place is based on a place, but none of the characters are based on it. And when they were making the TV adaptation, the producer went to the little village, and he was, seeing if it would be an ideal location. And afterwards he said to me, Graham, there are 3 sisters called the Ross sisters who live in that village. I'm like, no, I did not know that. So I can see, if Jenny knows that, I can see why she asked that question. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I guess when you talk about like drawing on, Cork and that overlap with Frankie, I guess that's something where things are, of course, that area and what that place might be like, and what it might have been like back in the 60s.
Yes, I would know that. But 70s, let's go 70s. Yeah. But yes, I wanted to write about what I knew, but at the same time I didn't want to have me as a character in these books. So, I didn't want to set it in media or London or celebrity or any of those things. So really, the only other thing I know in a kind of profound way is West Cork.
Yeah, and you do it so well.
Oh, thank you.
Heather from Forum Books asks, why do you think Irish writing is so popular at the moment?
I mean, it's difficult. I think success begets success, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think, a lot of it must be laid at the door of Sally Rooney. Sally Rooney's this global phenomenon. So obviously publishers are going, anyone else in Ireland that we could call the next Sally Rooney and sell some books? So, but there is an extraordinary amount of talent in Ireland. I mean, there's people who've been around a bit longer than Sally, people like Donal Ryan and people like that, John Boyne. But now there's all these exciting people like Nisha Dolan, Oisin McKenna. I mean, is he Irish? I don't know. He's born here.
Was he born in London?
Was he?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not,
Google him. His name's Oisin McKenna. Come on.
I have met him.
Irish accent?
I'm trying to remember, but I'm pretty sure. When you're like, I'm trying to remember. I didn't think.
We'll call him Irish.
Yeah.
We'll claim him.
But then I feel like, who am I to talk about who's Irish? Do you know what I mean? So
we'll claim him. And obviously then there's people, Claire Keegan, who's, she's another one who's created an entire genre. And we were like laughing, looking around the bookshop, that now there are books that are designed to look like a Claire Keegan book. Because I don't think there was a market for those little books before, but now there is.
Yeah, but it's classic publishing, isn't it? That if I was thinking when you say about Sally Rooney, if I had £1 for every time that someone sent me a proof that said, perfect for fans of Sally Rooney, the next Sally Rooney, I wouldn't need to have a bookshop, honestly. Like it is amazing, and you
get why people do it, because it's a shorthand to try and get a book into somebody's hands.
Yes,
but and as I say, it's been extraordinary for Irish publishing. There are so many new Irish voices out there now.
Yeah. We have a question from Keith at the Holty Bookshop, who says, "Do you like reading biographies? Or by the time you've done another series of your TV show, have you had enough biographies?"
I mean, Keith's not wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I do. I do encounter a lot of biographies because of work. I have to say, biographies are really, that's where I go to for audiobooks. So I think biographies are very good for, dog walks, car drives, that kind of thing. And they're not all as good as each other. Some of them are quite challenging, but that's when I enjoy them. I enjoy the voice of the person telling their own story.
Yes.
Those are the good ones for me. I can't remember the last time I actually sat down and read one. Oh, I can actually. Griffin Dunn. Have you had that book here?
No, I don't.
Griffin
think
Dunn.
so.
I think it's called the Tuesday Afternoon Club or something.
Oh,
Griffin Dunn. He was an actor. He is an actor-director. He's the son of Dominic Dunn. Do you remember Dominic Dunn, who used to do their big profiles at Vanity Fair?
Yes, yeah.
And so Dominic's daughter, Griffin's sister, was murdered, and it's the big kind of thing in their lives, all of their lives, and it became. Dominic Dunn became a kind of celebrity reporter on the back of that.
Wow.
And but Griffin Dunn has written this amazing memoir. I think it's called the Tuesday Afternoon Club. Ooh. Maybe it's the Thursday Afternoon Club. Google Afternoon Club.
Yes. That's amazing. It's because I was going to ask you what is the best memoir you could recommend or biography, and would that be it? I'm going for that for them at the moment. I love that. Shares is also great. Yeah. I noticed that here. Shares is great. Shares audiobook is really a tapestry.
Is it? soft voices. You're never quite sure. There is an actor reading it.
Okay.
But sometimes there's someone doing a Cher impression, and then sometimes it is Cher.
Oh.
But you're never quite sure.
I was going to say, why is she not reading? Well, I mean, I can understand why.
She's not very good. I don't. She's not a very good reader. She's severely dyslexic. So I think some of the bits she does are kind of chatty.
Yes.
Not actually in the book.
Oh.
I think. I don't really know.
Yes.
Like I say, but it's a feast for the ear.
I love that. That's great. Thank you for those recommendations. You can have a job at Bookbar anytime, should you choose to move out of media. Speaking of recommendations, were there any books or authors that you particularly drew inspiration from when you were writing Frankie?
I mean, that's who asked that question?
That was from Monica at the Haunted Bookshop.
Monica and the Haunted Bookshop. That's one of those questions. Obviously, I do have an answer to that. But the minute you start naming books, people go, who the hell does he think he is? What? You thought it was going to be like that? No, I didn't. But the idea of the story of a life.
Yeah.
Something like William Boyd's Any Human Heart. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow also kind of woke me up to kind of like how lovely it is to spend the arc of a life with people.
I love that book.
And that was kind of what got me into the idea of writing a whole woman's life in a book. But I'm not comparing my book to those books. But Monica asked the question. That is the answer. And
also, you don't need to be like saying, I want to be this. You're just inspired.
Yes, I'm just inspired. Inspired, yes.
Okay, next one is Ruth from Drop City Books, who says, I love this so much. Hi, Graham. We know that you auditioned to play Samwise Gamgee in Lord of the Rings.
This is left field.
That was new information to me. I love that. One of literature's greatest ever best mates. We believe that in books, the best friends, the colleagues, the grandmas, or the weird neighbours are often more interesting than the heroes. Do you have a favourite supporting character from one of your books?
Ooh, I mean, I love Nor in Frankie. I have to say, she is kind of my favourite character. Almost to a point where I kind of thought, maybe I should have written a book about her. I do really, really like her. In other books, in my second novel, A Keeper, there's a character called Rosemary. And there's basically it's a mother and a daughter. So there's a story told from the point of view of the mother, and then years later, the daughter is trying to find out about her mother. And Rosemary is the link. She was a friend of the mother's, and now she's an old lady living in the town. And I love her. She's got these stupid dogs. Her house is kind of filthy. She likes to drink. I really like Rosemary.
I love that. Were you tempted? Have you ever been tempted to like build a world, a bit of like Colm Toybin or someone like that? Have you ever sort of been tempted to build characters in the same town or the same world across books?
I often use the same place names.
Yes.
But they're not so specific. I'll occasionally reference the name of a hotel, or sometimes I'll think I've referenced a place name. And then I'll go back and look at the other book. Oh no, that isn't what that place was called. So it's a very loose world. We'll just call it West Corky.
Yes.
It's West Corky, and sometimes it's a kind of a mix. Sometimes I will reference real places, but normally the characters live in fictional villages or towns.
For the same reason that you spoke about earlier.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I talked to Claire Keegan about that, because Small Things Like These is set in a really specific place, New Ross, and it's absolutely accurate. And I was saying to her, why bother? Because the vast majority of people reading that book will have never heard of New Ross. They don't know what it looks like. Why give yourself that extra aggro? And she didn't really answer.
No, some people say that authors, like the readers, will then get in touch with the author and say, well, actually that post office wasn't there in 1949. It was actually there, I guess it removes that.
For me, yes, that's certainly a big reason why I don't do it. Yeah.
The next question is from Eileen from Mostly Books. My question is, do you keep books once you've read them, or do you pass them on? And if you keep them, what's the oldest book you've got on your shelves?
I do keep them more than pass them on. I'll pass on recommendations, but it's such an odd thing, isn't it? we don't keep anything else.
I know.
Like, I can't think, I mean, I suppose we used to keep records and CDs and things. We don't do that anymore. But books, I still hold on to. And, you know, the chances of me rereading any of them are so slim. But I find great comfort in them. It is like a sort of, I don't know, a memory of your life, or a kind of scrapbook of your life on shelves. And you know, I've moved house multiple times with some of those books. And when you're packing up, finding them it is like discovering an old friend. You know, you've got, oh, that cover, I remember that. And it brings you back to when you read it, where you were on holiday, or how old you were, who your friends were, where you were working at the time. Books, I mean, obviously I've got some very old books, you know, people who gifted me and things, but big books that I went into a shop and bought, I suppose I've got a couple that go back to the 70s, kind of late 70s, 78, 79. I know Sylvia Plath, The Bell Jar would be one of those. John Fowles, Daniel Martin, I'm pretty sure is, if that was published then, that's when I bought it. But I remember, yeah.
That's amazing. It is true. They are just this emotional thing that I think the tapestry of your life is exactly it. And you can look at a book and remember exactly where you were.
I love that.
Can't you? It's so
also,
nice.
There is something about walking into a room with books in it. And I don't know what that is, but it's quite settling rather than unsettling. It makes you kind of go, okay, we're in a warm place, you know, emotions have been felt, thoughts have been had, there was an emotional life in this room.
Yeah, and actually, even if the place you're in isn't someone who's a reader, you know, even if it's not the living room of someone that you know is a reader, if there's books there, maybe it is that it does identify someone as a reader and you think, you know, I'm amongst friends. Or maybe it is that you're right, you know, that there's emotion there.
The only time that doesn't happen is colour-coded bookshelves, which have become quite a thing now.
I know.
And that makes me go, whoa.
Yeah, you can tell looking around this bookshop that is not the case.
Yes, this is not
we
the case.
are
Yeah.
very much a sort of maximalist space in terms of colour and
Yes, my bookshelves are, why is that there? Because that's where it lives.
Yeah.
That's
I'm
where
so
that
glad you
book
say
lives.
that.
That's where
I'm
that
the
book
same.
lives. Yeah.
I'm the same. I'm just like I put things together that feel like they have the same emotional attachment or something.
You've thought about it more than I have.
No.
Mine are literally, that's where it is. And I kind of know normally where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's always so impressed when they come into the shop and they ask for a book and we just walk over to a shelf and go, yeah, there we go. It's such a good bookshop.
That is impressive.
Bookshop skill, but that's obviously because, you know, it's my job and I'm doing it every day.
Job, yeah.
Yes, I shouldn't congratulate myself too much. Sarah from Mostly Books says, who was your favourite childhood author?
Ooh, you know, like so many people, Enid Blyton was a big, you know, 'cause my sister read Enid Blyton, so and you know, you can't underestimate the importance of that being the first book you read by yourself. That it might have had illustrations in it, but it wasn't a picture book, and that makes you feel so grown up and independent. And I don't need anyone anymore. I can tell myself the stories.
No help at all there.
Who else did I like? Richmal Compton, who did, you know, the Just William books. I loved those. I'll tell you what book I loved, and I don't know if kids still read it anymore. It was by Clement Freud, the late Clement Freud, and it was called, one was called Grimble, and one was called Grimble at Christmas. And the illustrations were Quentin Blake. And I can remember that book making me laugh like a drain. I loved it. And then years later, in that kind of weird way, I ended up working with Clement all the time on Just a Minute on Radio 4. And it seemed so unlikely he'd written those books. But he did. And I adored them.
That's so nice. What a full circle moment.
Yeah.
I love those moments. Alex from Edinburgh asks, I'd love to know about Graham's writing process. Where do you do your best or most productive writing?
Ooh, I mean, for me, it's more to do with time rather than place. You know, my most productive writing is when I've got a stretch of time.
Yeah.
And then you really, you know, you get into the weeds of it all. so that's most important thing. Where I don't really mind where, kind of I have a laptop wherever I am. I'm not one of the, because the other thing is, writing is something that I do around my other jobs, and I think I'm not dismissing myself or anything as a writer, but it is different.
Yeah.
Being a novelist the way I am, and someone who is a full-time novelist. I think full-time novelists can have the luxury of, I must do it in this room, I write so many 100 words before 10 o'clock, and then I break for coffee, and then, I could never have that.
No.
Because I just need to grab, the opportunity whenever it appears. Yeah. So, but towards the end of the writing process, when I have to be really strict and I kind of go, okay, we're getting to the end, I've got to finish this book, that's when I have to be quite structured and kind of block out time for the book. But I look forward to it. If I see in my diary there's 2 days blocked out for a book, I think, oh great, book days.
Yeah, that's so nice. So nice. It must be such a different thing to everything else you're doing, which is so social and so on.
Yeah.
To then use that different part of your brain. It's
a lovely sort of counterpoint to everything else. I don't think I could be the full-time novelist. I think I'd go a bit doolally. I do need more social interaction than being a full-time writer might provide. But as a reaction to everything else, I always think it's the only thing in my life that doesn't involve meetings. Yeah. Everything else, there's a meeting and other people and kind of like, that'll do, and isn't that okay? But it's the one thing that kind of I own, and it fails or succeeds because of me. Yeah.
It's also quite, something that you're doing, like you say, on your own. It does involve a big team once it comes to publishing.
Obviously, once you come to that
in the
part,
moment,
yes.
It's you and the page, and that must be quite.
Yes, I'm not saying should the house burn down.
Yeah.
I go, house burnt down, or house didn't burn down. But there isn't. I'm not looking around the room going, what do you think? House? It's my decision.
Yeah, I love that. The next question is from Emily from Newcastle. If Frankie was adapted for screen, who would you see in the leading roles? This one always a fun question.
It is, and I really struggle with it, because I don't really know is the answer. I mean, there's the kind of, there are famous Irish actors.
Yeah.
So, Saoirse Ronan can do it when she's young. Yes. Fiona Shaw can do it when she's old. There. Yes. My work here's done. You realise why casting directors are hired and get paid very handsomely, because it's a really difficult thing to do. Yeah. There's an actor called, I think her name's Eileen Brennan. She plays the wife, funny enough, third shout out for Claire Keegan. She plays the wife in Small Things Like These.
Which I haven't seen yet.
And she is she used to work with Cillian Murphy. They did Disco Pigs years ago in Cork, in a little kind of student theatre, and now they've been reunited all these years later
in big time,
in this big movie. She's a terrific actor.
Great, I love that. Who would she be? Would she be
one of them?
One of them. Nor?
I think Nor has, to me, Nor has such a kind of a British sensibility.
And she's lost her accent, hasn't she? So
she has.
She could.
I mean, older Fiona Shaw could do that standing on her head.
Yeah.
It's very her. I mean, Fiona Shaw's a bit young, but, that's life, isn't it?
They cannot age up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Modern filming. The final question is from the team from Simply Books. Why was it important to you to portray a story surrounding the elderly and the experiences of carers?
The honest answer is it suited my purposes. But beyond that, I think what I like about it is, particularly in this instance, because the carer is young, and obviously the Frankie is old, and I like the way they look at her life from two different directions, and how I think he will see it as a kind of a sadness that, all her glory days are behind her. She's looking back, thinking, I was never happier than then. And I think he thinks, oh, isn't that awful? But of course, for Frankie, it's totally different, because it's like a badge of honor, or a lovely treasure that she's got in her possession. This memory of the happiness she had. And I think it's got to be that way. Young people have to live their life differently. And I think that's one of the nice things. There are no shortcuts. You can't get Frankie's wisdom early doors. Frankie can tell you it all. She can say everything to you, but it has to be experienced. You can kind of hear it and maybe understand it in a kind of empathetic way, but you won't really know it until you're 80 and you're sat in a chair and you're thinking about your past glories. But I do think that gift that carers give their patients is extraordinary, because Frankie gets to relive it all in telling Damien about it. And I think that's lovely. And my mother's 93, and she's got various people coming in to care for her, and she loves it. And I think they enjoy it, because my mother's still got all her faculties. She can tell her stories. She's got her memories, and I think it's a beautiful relationship between carer and patient.
That's so nice. I grew up in a care home for the elderly. My parents had a business and we lived in the attic.
Oh, wow.
And so it's such a, when I was reading this book, honestly, I was like, it reminded me a lot of that experience, because I would have been like 5.
Yeah.
Sort of 6. I think I was like from 5 till 8, so only for 4 years, and then we moved out.
And did you spend time downstairs with the old people?
Yeah, all the time. I would sing and perform for them. Or them, But it was probably quite nice in that it meant that there was this family sort of growing up around them, and we would hear all their stories, and we would, I'd sit in their rooms and they'd feed us sweets, and, they'd chat to me about their lives, and it really reminded me of that experience. And obviously that's quite a unique sort of well, it's like a weird way to grow up.
I have to say, I feel like the world of caregiving has changed. A friend of mine, her mother's in an old people's home, and my friend got an email from the home saying, next Monday we've got a performance by a male exotic dancer. And they said, we've explained to, we'll call her Brenda, we explained to Brenda what's going to happen. She's chosen to attend. There will be someone with Brenda. If she decides partway through the performance she's no longer enjoying it, they'll be able to take her out. But isn't that amazing?
I love that.
I know.
That's so great. I mean, there was no exotic dancing going on in Cheltenham, Gloucestershire.
I mean, I thought it was a tough gig. I thought it was a tough gig. People doing close harmony singing. But imagine being a male exotic dancer by yourself with a boombox.
I actually love to be a fly on the wall.
It's very Beryl Cook, isn't it?
It really is. That's amazing. Yeah, you do that relationship so beautifully,
and the
way that the because I think the young people often are dismissive of older people when they're in that last stage of their lives, and then reading Frankie makes you kind of remember that.
Yeah. Well, I think
wisdom there.
Also, I think there's a real impatience in you. Like, I find it, if you're walking behind an old person, going to the tube or just like, really? Couldn't you move around off peak? Where are you going? And then, you realise, oh, God, in a heartbeat, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
That will be me shuffling along. And, it's even that thing where I remember I was in New York and I was standing on the corner waiting to cross the street, and there were some kids across the road, and I just remember thinking, wow, if those kids are registering the fact that there's a man on the other corner at all, they're just seeing some old man. Yeah. They've no idea. It was just because of course internally we're all somebody else, and I think that's Frankie. Yeah. And I think that's why some old people get quite crotchety in their old age, because they become impatient with their own bodies, with their own, they're furious that this is where they've ended up.
Yeah, and then that softening that Frankie has with
Yeah.
Damien is just so lovely to witness.
Oh, thank you.
As they soften kind of towards one another.
Yeah.
It's just lovely. Yeah. Excellent.
Woohoo!
All good.
Thank you so much.
I was about to